sound so clear. Round both the shiles they ring them, in steeples far and near, a happy noise to hear. Here of a Sunday morning, I love a night.
Part of a song from Arthur Somerville's A Shropshire Lad, setting words by A.E. Houseman. The singer was the baritone James Newby, with Joseph Middleton at the piano, and that comes from their brand new Bis album, Fallen to Dust, an English song recital. I'm James Jolly, and welcome to this Gramophone podcast, given in association with Wigmore Hall, which this coming week sees visits by Gramophone Award winners Paul Lewis, Mark Padmore and Boris Giltberg. Full details at the end. James Newby's second album for Bis, following the highly acclaimed I Wonder As I Wander, focuses on English song, and I caught up with him to talk about it. Now, one of the things that emerges when you listen to the album is that English song, and I guess here that means song written in English in the UK, has a really impressive tradition.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're very grateful to the poets, I think, for inspiring so many great settings of the work. I mean, like you say, the Houseman, the vast majority of them have been set to music by somebody. And yeah, that's the other thing about these huge global events, like these two wars, which have really, the First World War and the Second World War, and the Boer War, which of course is what the Houseman...
Well, it's interesting because I think when anybody hears a setting of Houseman, I mean, either the Butterworth or the Somerville or some of the standalone ones, they immediately think this must be a response to the First World War. And actually the songs were written, almost 2 decades beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. And the poems, of course, as well, even earlier than that. And it's all wrapped up, isn't it, now with Butterworth and just the huge loss of life and the foreshadowing of all that. I mean, Butterworth was killed by a sniper in the First World War. And they're just, for both wars, it's just so palpable what happened and the fact that they were written before and then all the composers that got caught up in them, they're so poignant.
Now, the album sort of, I was going to say inspiration, but that's not quite the right word. The impetus for this album is a very sad one for you personally.
Yeah, it's dedicated to my sister. She passed away in 2015, and also to my mum and my niece, who is my sister's daughter. And yeah, I sung Fear No More, the Heat of the Sun at her funeral.
I mean, that must have been really difficult, was it?
Yeah. In hindsight, they tell you not to do that. I think but it's a human, the CD as well, it's a human thing to just, in the face of something like that, to want to do something, even though there's nothing you can do.
Because people often talk about seeking solace in music, but that's usually as a listener. But I mean, as a performer, does it work in the same way to you? Does it provide some kind of catharsis?
Definitely. I remember really vividly being at Trinity Laban and being in a practice room and singing through a Schubert song and just stopping and being like, that is exactly how I feel. Yeah, it was a crazy feeling, and it's actually it really informs the way that I go about music making since then, is that we can have these moments. It can put into words or put into an emotion or a sound world what it is that you can't explain yourself. And that is therapy, right? It's the being able to take these huge emotions and making them understandable in some way.
Because there are a number of songs, poems here that are direct responses to the death of somebody close to them. I mean, there's the Butterworth, obviously, setting words by Oscar Wilde, and the death of Oscar Wilde's sister, which is probably the closest to your situation. And then, of course, the Finzi, setting a Thomas Hardy poem on the death of his wife. Mm-hmm. And was that kind of the germ of the album?
Well, the theme is death. I like themes when I program stuff anyway, and I think it's fun when you get one theme that there's a thread that goes through the program, and then it gives you license to find as much different stuff as you can. And I think that's what we tried to do. So we tried to create a really personal sound world with lots of different stuff, and there's a few big hits in there that we've heard of, perhaps the Finzi and the Somerville, the Shropshire Lad. But then there's things like Errolyn Wallen's About Here, and there's Jonathan Dove, and we've got The Green-Eyed Dragon is in there, and some Lisa Lehman's song, which is quite funny as well. So we've tried to kind of create, with that theme, a real nice evening's concert, rather than that it being a depressive dirge, if you like.
Does it exist already as a concert program, and have you been doing it, or will that follow the release of the album perhaps?
We haven't done it yet, actually. We were all a bit delayed with programs because we were doing this Echo recital this year, and that was meant to be 2 years ago. So that was the first CD. So we've actually spent the whole of this year doing the first CD, I Wonder As I Wander, pretty much. So yeah, we just have to find opportunity now going forward to get it out there in real life, yeah.
And are you a very sort of keen consumer of song? I mean, I know Joe Middleton is his knowledge of song and lied is absolutely extraordinary, and it's amazing what he finds. But I mean, is that something that you enjoy too?
Yeah, I love when I'm programming stuff. I mean, Joe's amazing to lean on. He's an amazing partner to have. But I really love just going to find different stuff and things that people have never heard of and things I haven't heard of. And I like to try and include contemporary works whenever I perform. And that's what the theme helps do, is sort of allows you to do that. And it's nice then when you do really contrasting styles and time periods, because then each song seems to have its own moment in an evening. I think you can, when you do lots of the same composer, then it can sort of become all lumped in together, whereas when you use the theme and then have each moment is its own atmosphere, which I find really a beautiful way to sort of construct an evening.
And of course another theme is that it's all in English, it's all in your native tongue.
Yeah.
I mean, do you enjoy singing in English? Because obviously you sing in, German and Italian and French, no doubt.
I absolutely love to sing in the native language of the audience, as long as my pronunciation isn't a barrier to enjoyment. So I love doing English because it responds directly, and I try to put at the forefront of all my music making communication. And so when it's super direct, straight to the audience, and you can see that everybody's on board, and then you really can create a really cool atmosphere where it's not needed to look down and check the translation and then look up and see what I'm doing, or then it's sort of like, if my diction's good, then we've got the beautiful sound world created by the composer, and then my job is just to add the cherry on the cake of that, which is the understanding of the words, and then the whole atmosphere is there.
The chief defect of Henry King was chewing little bits of string. At last he swallowed some, which tied itself in ugly knots inside.
And are you very conscious as a performer when you're on stage of the energy that the audience gives you?
Oh yeah, hugely, yeah. Joe and I are very aware of that, and it's an amazing feeling, because sometimes it really feels like something's kind of levitating. It's like this kind of bubble. I hate using that as a bit of a cliche, isn't it, that word? But it's like something's hovering, something's in suspense. And the moment that we drop, it allows the audience to drop. And so I always find with the recitals, for example, Schöne Müllerin, I think it's important that when you perform that, or when we perform that, we try to keep the intensity from the beginning to the end. And only right at the end is the moment that you can let that elapse. And then it feels like we've all been held in this story for an hour, and you can feel it when it gets to the end, when it's gone really well, that the audience kind of goes, whoa. And it takes a while then for us all to kind of understand what's happened almost. It's because you were so wrapped up in it. But I think that's good. I think when you get to the end of a recital and somebody says, wow, that went so quickly, that's a really good sign that everybody's been engaged.
Because it is an interesting atmosphere when you're listening to particularly a song cycle where the audience knows, or generally knows, not to applaud between songs. There is that sort of, the energy stays and you go on. And in a really intense cycle like, I don't know, Winterreise, you really do you feel you're almost in some sort of strange grip of something.
Yeah, totally. When I do a song cycle, I try never to break character. Well, that's the best thing to do, I think. Then you have to find the connection between the songs. So the story goes on in our heads of what's going to happen. And obviously the audience can't hear our thoughts in that moment, but the intensity of continuing the performance and continuing sending thoughts and energy into the room makes that kind of tension, which I think is super important.
On this album, you've got the Somerville setting of A Shropshire Lad. In the note, I saw Richard Stokes draws the parallel with Dichterliebe, saying that, when Schumann came to write Dichterliebe, he was drawing on the Heine songs, and there was something like 65. And when Somerville came to set Houseman, he was drawing on sort of 63 and boiling it down to 10. It doesn't it doesn't have a sort of tight narrative, but there is definitely a shape to the setting.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely an ebb and flow through it, isn't there? And I think each song has its own sound world, which is nice, and quite a lot of variety as you go through, which I think is also interesting for the sort of the listener to constantly be listening in a different way. But yeah, the texts are obviously, when you know the context of them, then you're sort of kept in the same part of history somehow, through the whole cycle. So we all sort of know what the header is of, the world, the wars and whatever. So you're sort of kept in that kind of world, but there's a lot of variety in them as well.
And of course, the other sort of cycle on the album is the Gerald Finzi Let Us Garland Spring, which are settings of 5 chunks of Shakespeare. In mood terms, it's a lighter feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're really a fascinating collection as well, because the first one and the third one are very moving. And then you have this lightness of Who is Sylvia and the Or Mistress Mine. And then obviously the final one, It Was a Lover and His Lass, is actually quite cheeky in a way. It's quite kind of two lovers romping around in the fields kind of thing. So it's nice as a song cycle there to have the theme is Shakespeare and Finzi, right? And then the different ideas you can bring out, and that's a nice thing as well. And it adds some nice variety in the CD as well.
And as a British singer, you presumably you do sometimes sing English song when you're in a continental European country. I mean, nowadays, so many people speak English. There's a much better connection. I mean, do they go down well there?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the prime example of that is that on this Echo tour, we were composed a piece by Judith Bingham called Casanova in Lockdown, and she wrote the text herself, sort of informed from his diaries. And it's very witty, and in parts it's quite dry, and in other parts it's quite show-offy, but the story is it's very narrative driven, and it's 10 minutes long. And we have been blown away by the reception that's had. Like we were a bit unsure if people would get it quite, because the narrative is so important, and if people weren't understanding, perhaps they weren't quite getting it. But everybody has seemed to really, really enjoy it, and they've laughed in every country we've been to, in Vienna, in Hamburg, in Lisbon, like everywhere we've been to, they've really enjoyed it, which has been really cool.
And how did you go about selecting the contemporary songs on this album? I mean, the Jonathan Dove, the Errolyn, Wallen.
Well, the Jonathan Dove we really liked because of the intimacy of the sound world, and also the fact that it's sort of a song for everybody. The way that it uses the word you is really special, and we tried to do this in our first album as well with I Wonder As I Wander. When you sort of use the word you so intimately in the first song, we kind of hope that is an invitation into the album. And it's a very kind of beautiful, still song, and the text is very, very moving. And we kind of hoped that would be the sort of welcoming hand into the album.
And the album closes with, it's a sort of encore, the Green-Eyed Dragon. I mean, where did you find that one?
I found that I stole that, I have to admit, from Gerald Finley, who sings it probably way better than me. But I've done it in lots of concerts and things. And my niece, whenever she's come to watch Lily, she always loves that one because it's a real story. It's almost like a Disney song. And so it had to be on there. It seems the album's dedicated to her and her mum. So that's one of her favourites.
Because I love on the SACD version of this is that there's a little warning saying that because the album is so long, you might actually not be able to play that straight off. So you've got to take a sort of run up at it through the song ahead.
Right. Yeah. Well, so we had 4 days to record, and we thought we'd put down lots of stuff, and then if a few things didn't come out so well, then we'd take it out. And we were sort of in the throes of doing that and taking things out and what didn't quite work and how to do an order. And then Robert Funbar from BIS listened to it and said, nope, we want the lot. And then it's great customer value. So we were very happy with that because it means we didn't have to, sacrifice anything.
So how big a part of your musical life does song recital and song in general fit? I mean, how does it fit into your world?
It's pretty major part, actually. Yeah, I sing opera as well, and obviously oratorio.
Because you're based
things.
in Germany now, are you?
That's right, yeah. I'm based in Hanover. So I was in the ensemble there, so part of their in-house singers for 3 years. Did lots of fun things there, and now I'm just living there, but back to being freelance. And the song stuff is a real mainstay of my career, yeah. And if anybody does know of me, then it's probably from that's my sort of reputation a little bit, yeah.
And operatically, what are your ambitions?
Yeah, I mean, I love opera. I love being on stage, and I enjoy it a lot. And so just continue doing opera stuff, and hopefully it kind of catches up a bit with the song stuff. But obviously, being in Hanover for 3 years now, I'm sort of back auditioning and stuff. So just getting out there a bit. I'm just doing Grange Park this year, and then Garsington next year, and some operas in Vienna, and back to
And
Hanover.
what would your sort of musical centre of gravity be on the operatic stage? I mean, are you sort of Mozart, and you've sung on Onegin.
Yeah. I had to go on Onegin last year, and I'm doing that again next year, which is amazing. And that's one of the great things about a Fest contract, is that you get the opportunity to do things like that. But I'd say the main stuff is Mozart, lyric baritone things, and then obviously any English repertoire. And I absolutely love doing contemporary repertoire as well. So I was really lucky to do Eddie in Greek by Anthony Turnage, and that is one of the most fantastic experiences I've ever had on stage. I think it was absolutely amazing.
Because that's almost become a sort of repertoire work now.
Yeah, and quite right. It's an absolute riot of an hour and a bit. It's just a brilliant story and the whole thing. And I got to shave my head and wear a red tracksuit and perform in a Cockney accent. So it was great. And again, done in Germany, where you think perhaps maybe not everything will come across, but the audiences loved it. And it was great to see, yeah.
Have you found that sort of atmosphere in the concert hall has changed since we've, after the pandemic, and we've actually returned to concerts?
Yeah, I think audiences are slowly coming back. It seems to be the feeling from lots of people. But I think there was a funny period where it was socially distanced, and then it was sort of with masks and whatever. But I think the audiences that I've experienced just are happy to be back and happy to be enjoying it. And I know that the performers, especially after that hiatus, everybody gave their absolute all. It was like you remembered what you loved so much about it.
Did you benefit from the break, as it were, the pandemic? I mean, some musicians basically just said, actually, I'm going to sort of stop and I'm going to, get to know my family again. And others actually really put their time to good use and think, I'm going to learn roles, or I'm going to, explore certain corners of the repertoire I shall never have the chance to. Yeah,
all of those things are cool. I went back and stayed with my mum and was at home, family time for a bit. And that was awesome because I was living in Germany. So it was nice to be back at home and spend some family time. But I only got 4 weeks, and then Hanover started rehearsing again. So I went back, and they kept us fairly busy. Actually, we did anything we could within the bounds of the rules at the time. So we did an outdoor opera that was all fully distanced, and we did other stuff on the stage when that was allowed. And so, yeah, we were kept pretty busy.
We mentioned that, concerts. I mean, are there any plans to take this on the road, as it were?
There's not a concert in the diary as of yet for this one. So we're working on that and finding some time to do it. Music lives in the concert hall. So the CD's amazing, but yeah, we would certainly love to perform it live.
Do you enjoy the experience of recording? As you were just saying, it lives in the concert hall, but actually you're in an acoustically interesting room for 4 days or whatever.
I must admit, I find it quite a challenge. I think the thing that I love about music is slightly missing in that environment, and you end up just being, I do personally end up being just quite judgmental, and nothing's ever quite as good as I think it is in my head, and that I have to be careful that it doesn't sort of spiral into sort of but I'm sure that everybody feels a lot like that. What I love about it is to perform these songs live and have this sort of interaction with the audience, and to tell the stories and leave it in that moment. I think that's kind of nice. But obviously recording is, I'm very proud of the recording. I'm very grateful that we get to do it, and it's an amazing thing.
I sit upon the hill, I sit upon this hilltop, I hear coyotes cry, the life behind me.
Part of Errolyn Wallen's About Here. My guest, James Newby, was partnered by Joseph Middleton, who, incidentally, is one of the pianists appearing at Gramophone's centenary concert at Wigmore Hall on May the 14th. And James's new bis album, Fallen to Dust, is available to stream now and is out on CD on May the 5th. Gramophone podcasts are given in association with Wigmore Hall, and these are the concerts for the next week. On Saturday, April the 29th at 7:30, the pianist Paul Lewis plays 3 Schubert piano sonatas. The concert will be repeated on the evening of Monday, May the 1st. On Sunday morning at 11:30, Jennifer Canna-Mason plays piano works by Debussy, Florence Price, Prokofiev and Shostakovich. And that evening at 7:30, the soprano Sally Matthews, with Simon Lepper at the piano, gives a programme of Brahms, Mahler and Wolf, concluding with Richard Strauss's 4 Last Songs. On Monday lunchtime at 1 p.m. and live streamed, the pianist Tom Borrow plays Bach's Italian Concerto, César Franck's Prélude, Chorale et Fugue, and Rachmaninoff's Corelli Variations. And in the evening there's that repeat of Paul Lewis's Schubert concert. On Tuesday, May the 2nd at 7:30, the tenor Mark Padmore is joined by the Elias Quartet and pianist Pavel Kolesnikov for a programme of Haydn's String Quartet in G, Opus 33 No. 5, Fauré's La Bonne Chanson, and Vaughan Williams's 3 Whitman songs and his On Winlock Edge. On Wednesday evening, pianist Boris Giltberg is joined by 2 members of the Pavel Haas Quartet, violinist Veronika Yaroshova and cellist Peter Yaroshek, for Dvorak's piano trios in F minor and E minor, the Dumpke. On Thursday evening, May the 4th, the Silesian Quartet play 3 Polish quartets by Stanisław Moniuszko, Mieczysław Weinberg and Henryk Gorecki. 2 children's concerts on Friday, May the 5th at 11 o'clock and 12:30 precede an evening concert at 7:30 by the Wigmore soloists. French composers feature and include Fauré, Debussy, Ravel, as well as Alphonse Hasselmans and Guillaume Connaissant, whose Techno Parade is featured. The programme for the 2023-24 Wigmore Hall season has just been announced. Full details can be found at wigmore-hall.org.uk, where you can also watch a video of the Hall's director, John Gilhooly, introducing the season. Priority booking for concerts between September and December 2023 will open next week on Wednesday, April the 19th. General sale of tickets for the same period will open on Thursday, May the 4th, and tickets for the under-35s concerts will go on sale on Thursday, May the 11th. And don't forget Gramophone's 100th birthday concert at Wigmore Hall on May the 14th. A wonderful lineup of artists, including many Gramophone Award winners, will perform to tell the story of Gramophone's first century. Tickets are available from Wigmore Hall. Gramophone podcasts are free, but if you enjoy them, then a really great way to support our work is to take out a subscription to Gramophone magazine. Over 13 issues a year, we bring you hundreds of reviews by our expert critics, as well as in-depth articles about the latest classical music releases and the most exciting musicians of the day. And if you head over to gramophone.co.uk/subscribe and enter the code podcast20 in the checkout, you can even get a 20% discount off any subscription package. We really value your support. And consider leaving a review or rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. And do look out for another Gramophone podcast very soon.